I bet you didn't know forests could watch you. My heart hammered in the suffocating silence, each beat echoing in my ears as if the forest itself was listening. The darkness pressed in from all sides, thick and impenetrable, swallowing every sound except my own ragged breath. I was frozen, feet rooted to the forest floor, every instinct screaming at me to run, but my body refused to obey. The cold earth beneath me felt like it was holding me captive, refusing to let me escape. A shadow detached itself from the trees, neither animal nor human, but a void in the shape of a man. It watched me, its presence heavy and unblinking, as if daring me to move or even breathe. This was Hoia Baciu, Romania's haunted forest, where legends spoke of vanishings, UFOs, and ghostly apparitions. The stories I'd heard seemed distant and unreal, until now, when every shadow felt alive. Locals warned of strange energies and a forest that played tricks on the mind. They spoke in hushed tones, their eyes darting to the window, as if the woods themselves might overhear. My plan was simple: spend one night in the heart of the world's most haunted woods. I wanted to see if the legends were true, to face the unknown and return with a story no one would believe. As I crossed the threshold, the air grew heavy, the birds fell silent, and I felt watched, primal fear prickling my skin. Every step forward felt like a step deeper into another world, one ruled by shadows and secrets. My headlamp cut frantic arcs through the darkness, but there was nothing, just twisted trees, their branches like gnarled fingers reaching for me, and the sense that something waited just beyond the edge of the light. The forest itself seemed to judge me, its ancient silence pressing in, as if it remembered every trespasser who had ever dared to enter. I was alone, yet never more crowded, surrounded by something unseen. The feeling of being watched grew stronger, as if invisible eyes tracked my every move. The legends were no longer stories, they were becoming real. Flickers of movement danced at the edge of my vision, and the air shimmered with a cold, unnatural energy. And I was trapped in their midst, caught between the world I knew and the mysteries that waited in the clearing in the dark. We pushed deeper, the path vanishing behind us. Hoia Baciu's reputation is built on disappearances and high strangeness. UFOs, lights, voices, shadows. The trees twisted at unnatural angles, as if warped by some unseen force. Scientists found nothing unusual, yet the forest felt corrupted, alive with secrets. Our goal, the infamous clearing, a perfect circle where nothing grows, said to be a portal, the epicenter of the forest's energy. As we neared, a low hum vibrated through my boots. Every sound sent adrenaline surging. Skepticism gave way to primal fear. The forest offered no answers, only a deepening sense of foreboding. One legend haunted me. The shepherd and his flock vanished without a trace, their absence echoing through the valley for generations. The story was whispered by locals, a warning and a mystery, as if the land itself remembered their loss. It was as if they had been erased by the forest, swallowed whole by the ancient woods, leaving behind only questions and unease. We found the clearing, a barren circle, the trees recoiling from its edge, their branches twisted away as if in fear. Stepping inside, the air crackled with static. The ground was cold and smooth, untouched by time or life, as if something unnatural had swept through. Our equipment failed, camera, recorder, phone, all dead, as if the forest itself was silencing us, refusing to let its secrets be captured or shared. We were cut off, left only with our senses and the oppressive weight of the unknown pressing in from all sides. Then, the whispers began, faint, unintelligible, shifting from curious to menacing, as if the forest itself was alive and watching. A powerful urge to flee gripped me, but I stayed, rooted by fear and fascination, unable to look away from the mystery unfolding before me. The silence was absolute, a void that pressed against my ears, making every breath feel loud and fragile. The forest was about to reveal its secrets, and I could sense something ancient stirring just beyond the edge of sight. I braced myself for what would come next, heart pounding, knowing we had crossed a threshold that could never be uncrossed. The whispers stopped. The silence that followed was thick, pressing in from all sides as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. Suddenly, lights appeared above the clearing, glowing orbs, orange and red, moving in silent, deliberate patterns. They seemed to pulse with a strange energy, weaving through the air as if performing a ritual only they understood. They hovered, bathing us in an eerie glow, casting long, shifting shadows that danced across the undergrowth. Then, as quickly as they had come, the orbs vanished, plunging us into a darkness deeper than before. The forest shifted. The path was gone. Where there had been a trail, now only tangled roots and brambles remained, as if the woods had swallowed our way home. Disoriented, my compass spun uselessly in my trembling hand, the needle whirling with no sense of direction, mocking my attempts to find north. The feeling of being watched became certainty. Every rustle, every snap of a twig seemed to echo with unseen eyes tracking our every move. Figures emerged at the edge, translucent, drifting, vaguely human, but featureless, with voids for eyes. They glided between the trees, their forms flickering like candle flames in the wind. Sorrowful moans floated on the air, a haunting chorus that seemed to seep from the very ground, chilling us to the bone. Then, from the opposite side came the bleating of sheep, soft at first, then growing louder, echoing strangely through the trees. A shepherd appeared, old-fashioned and spectral, leading a ghostly flock. His lantern cast a pale, wavering light, illuminating faces both familiar and lost to time. He looked at us with ancient sadness, eyes heavy with stories untold, then vanished into the woods, his flock dissolving into mist behind him. The forest had shown us its greatest legend, a ghostly reenactment of the lost shepherd, forever searching for a way out beneath the moonlit canopy. We stood frozen, witnesses to the impossible, our hearts pounding as the weight of the supernatural pressed in around us. The night was far from over. The forest held its breath, and so did we, knowing that more secrets waited in the darkness. Panic took over. We ran, but every path led us back to the clearing. The forest toyed with us, trapping us in a maddening loop. Whispers turned to mocking laughter. Then I felt weightless, my boots hovering above the earth. A burning sensation spread across my skin, ghostly figures closed in. The world went black, total sensory deprivation. I woke at the forest's edge, morning sun on my face, birdsong in the air. My equipment was dead, memory cards wiped clean, no proof, only my word. I left Hoya Baciu, but sometimes in the dead of night I still feel its presence. Did I truly escape, or did the forest keep a piece of me forever? The air ripped apart, cold, sharp, and alive with dread. A scream, raw and full of agony, tore through the suffocating darkness. It echoed off the trees, vibrating in my bones, so piercing it felt like it could shatter glass. It wasn't human. It was ancient, full of pain I couldn't comprehend, something primal, a wound in the night itself. My heart slammed against my ribs, each beat a desperate drum. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to escape whatever horror had awakened. Branches clawed at my face as I stumbled, lungs burning, fear metallic on my tongue. The forest closed in, every shadow a threat. The scream came again, closer, hunting me through the black labyrinth of trees. It was relentless, a predator stalking its prey. Darkness here was a physical presence, smothering sound and breath, pressing in until I could barely move. I was running blind, propelled by terror, my own ragged breathing deafening. Every step felt like it could be my last. A low, guttural growl vibrated from the ground, a predator toying with its prey. The earth itself seemed to pulse with menace. I risked a glance back, nothing but an impenetrable wall of black. The darkness was absolute, swallowing hope, but I could feel it, a cold spot moving with me, icy dread clinging to my back. Every hair on my body stood on end. The forest felt alive, ancient and utterly hostile. Every root, every shadow seemed to conspire against me. I tripped, crashing to the damp earth, wind knocked out of me. Mud filled my mouth, the taste grounding me in terror. The screaming stopped. An unnatural silence descended, more terrifying than the noise. The world held its breath, waiting. I had willingly walked into the abyss, and now, The abyss was staring back. My soul quaked beneath its gaze, and I knew true fear. My journey began in Pluckley, a place where the air itself seems to hum with secrets. The village sits quietly beneath a brooding sky, its ancient stones and timbered houses whispering of centuries past. Every corner here is steeped in shadow, and the mist clings to the ground like a shroud. Pluckley is proud, almost defiant of its haunted reputation. Officially England's most haunted village, it feels as if the boundary between the living and the dead is paper thin. The silence is broken only by the distant toll of the church bell and the soft rustle of leaves. Ghost stories aren't just told here, they're lived. Locals pass by, casting wary glances at the old pub, their footsteps echoing on the cobblestones as if wary of what might follow. But even in this village of phantoms, one place is feared above all: Daring Woods. The locals call it the Screaming Woods, and the name alone sends a chill down my spine. For centuries these woods have swallowed the unwary. The wind carries disembodied screams, and the trees seem to close in, their twisted limbs creaking like old bones. The woods are a vortex of tragedy: lost travelers, murdered souls, vanished soldiers. Each step deeper is like walking into the heart of a nightmare. Legends swirl in the fog: a highwayman pinned forever to an ancient oak, a woman's mournful cries echoing through the night, a platoon of soldiers lost without a trace. My heart pounds as I prepare to investigate. With only a flashlight and my resolve, I step toward the forest's edge, the crunch of leaves beneath my boots loud in the eerie silence. I can almost hear the faint, distant wails that have driven so many to madness. Daring Woods is England's dark, beating heart, its pulse felt in every gust of wind, every shadow that flickers at the edge of vision. And now, with a deep breath and a racing heart, I was about to step inside. As dusk descended like a shroud, I found myself at the threshold of the woods. The temperature plummeted, the air grew dense and still, an invisible boundary crossed. Birds ceased their songs, the light dwindled to an oppressive twilight beneath the canopy. Fog rose, curling around my ankles, obscuring the path ahead. Every tree appeared identical, twisted and menacing in the growing darkness. Disorientation washed over me, a classic sign of a potent paranormal sight. The environment itself seemed to amplify fear, rendering me vulnerable. I retrieved my recorder and EMF meter. "Is there anybody here?" My voice barely a whisper, swallowed by the mist. A low-frequency hum resonated through my bones, the forest's energy already asserting its presence. The investigation had commenced, and the forest was watching. The silence shattered. A heavy footstep snapped a twig behind me, echoing unnaturally through the trees, as if the sound bounced from trunk to trunk, multiplying in the darkness. I spun, flashlight trembling in my grip, its narrow beam slicing through the fog. The trees seemed to close in, their branches creaking and whispering, but all I saw was endless blackness and shifting shadows. Another sharp snap, this time to my left. The sound ricocheted between the trunks, making it impossible to tell where it truly came from. My heart pounded as I strained to see, nothing but emptiness. Something unseen was toying with me, circling just out of sight. Every breath of wind carried faint, mocking echoes, soft footsteps, distant whispers, the sense of eyes watching from every direction. "Who's walking with me?" I called out, my voice trembling and thin, swallowed by the trees. The echoes returned distorted, as if the forest itself was repeating my words in a low, mocking chorus. The air grew colder, my breath visible in the beam of my flashlight. The fog thickened, swirling around my legs, a chilling sign that something otherworldly was drawing near, trying to break through. Suddenly, footsteps multiplied, their rhythm echoing from every direction. It sounded like a phantom patrol, boots crunching leaves and twigs, the cadence growing louder, as if I was surrounded by invisible marchers. The clink of metal, the faint rustle of old leather straps, these were the sounds of the lost soldier's legend, now coming alive around me. Each noise seemed to crawl up my spine, impossible to pinpoint, impossible to escape. Suddenly, a woman's scream tore through the night, echoing off the trees and reverberating in my chest. The sound was so sharp, so real, It seemed to vibrate the very air, silencing everything else. My blood ran cold. This was the scream that gave the woods its haunted name. The silence that followed was even more terrifying, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. From the opposite direction, a man's guttural cry answered, echoing through the trees, bouncing and twisting until it sounded like a dozen voices wailing in agony. I was caught in a crossfire of spectral misery, a symphony of suffering, each echo layering over the last, filling the woods with a chorus of pain and loss. The forest was waking up, its groans and creaks joining the echoes, the trees themselves seeming to bend and twist in response to the cries. It felt as if the woods were alive, and they were screaming. I realized with a jolt of terror that I was no longer just an observer. The echoes in the trees had found me. I was now their target, and every sound was a warning that I was not alone. The screams faded, leaving a silence heavier than before. It was as if the entire forest was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. My hands shook uncontrollably, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it echo in my ears. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs felt rooted to the spot. I tried to process what I'd heard. This was raw, intelligent, and directed at me. Suddenly, a sharp drop in temperature beside me, like standing next to an open freezer. The air grew thick and heavy, each breath stinging my lungs with icy needles. My skin prickled, goosebumps rising as the cold seemed to seep straight into my bones. Then, out of nowhere, a heavy grip clamped down on my shoulder. Cold, firm, unmistakably real. The pressure was intense, as if invisible fingers were digging into my flesh, pinning me in place. I spun, lashing out at empty air, desperate to break free, but there was nothing there. The sensation lingered, a phantom pain that refused to fade. My skin burned. I looked down and saw 3 long red marks appear on my shoulder, fresh, angry scratches that hadn't been there before. Proof of a violent touch from something I couldn't see. Panic surged through me. This was no longer just sounds and feelings. Something had crossed the veil and harmed me. The forest felt alive, watching, waiting for my next move. The game had changed. I was no longer investigating, I was surviving. Every shadow seemed to move, every whisper of wind felt like a threat. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, my voice cracking with fear and defiance. The woods only pressed in closer, the darkness swallowing my words. The initial touch was a warning, a message that I was not welcome, that I had crossed a line. I knew the next would be worse. My mind raced with terror, every nerve on edge, bracing for what might come next. The spirits were no longer content to scream, they wanted to make me suffer. I could feel their anger, their hunger, swirling around me in the darkness. I was surrounded, and the real terror was just beginning. Every sense screamed that I was not alone, and that whatever was out there, it wanted me to feel its presence, to fear it, to know I was at its mercy. The scratch marks were a turning point. Suddenly, the legends weren't just stories. They were clawing their way into reality, leaving marks on my skin and the ancient trees around me. I heard the metallic scrape of a sword drawn from a scabbard, echoing through the fog. It was the infamous highwayman, his blade glinting beside the ancient oak, just as the tales described. My flashlight caught a flicker, a translucent man in 18th century attire, his face twisted in fury. He vanished behind the oak, but the chill of his presence lingered. The air thickened with his rage and pain, swirling in the mist like a living memory. Then from the shadows a woman's voice, soft, desperate weeping, echoed all around me. The legend of the mourning widow, doomed to wander these woods, was unfolding before my eyes. "Help me," she whispered, her face barely visible in the swirling fog. The sorrow in her voice was so deep it nearly brought me to my knees, just as the old stories warned. The highwayman's anger, the widow's despair, these weren't just echoes of the past. They were living tragedies, replaying themselves in the darkness, desperate to be seen and heard. My EMF meter screamed, its lights spiking wildly. Paranormal energy was everywhere, as if the very legends themselves were fueling it. The spirits were no longer content to remain hidden. They pressed in, forcing me to feel every ounce of their pain, their fury, their longing. The woods had become a stage for their endless, haunted play, and I was trapped at the center, surrounded by the living legends of England's most haunted forest. As night deepened, the mists thickened, swirling around me until they began to take on chilling humanoid forms, shadow people emerging from the fog like living nightmares. They were pure black, utterly featureless, their bodies absorbing every trace of light, darker than the night itself, as if they were holes torn in reality. They didn't move like anything human. Instead, they flickered in and out of existence, one moment distant, the next suddenly closer, as if the forest itself was breathing them in and out. Dozens of them materialized, encircling me in the mist. Their presence pressed in from all sides, radiating a cold alien intelligence that felt both ancient and predatory. The forest fell into a dead, watchful silence. Every sound was swallowed by the fog, leaving only the pounding of my heart. The calm before a storm I could sense, but not see. I shone my flashlight at them, but the beam vanished into their forms, as if they were made of pure void. The light was devoured, leaving only deeper darkness where they stood. A crushing psychic pressure built in my head, like invisible hands squeezing my skull. My vision blurred, my thoughts scattered, and a primal terror took hold, overwhelming every sense. I stumbled backward, every instinct screaming that I was prey, surrounded by silent, patient hunters who watched my every move. These were not lost souls or wandering spirits. Their presence was something far more primal, perhaps even demonic, radiating a malice that chilled me to the bone. The air grew thick with dread as more shadow people gathered, their numbers swelling, the atmosphere charged with a suffocating tension. My fear reached its peak. The shadows closed in, and I knew the final act of this terrifying night was about to begin. The attack exploded out of nowhere. A tidal wave of nausea and dread slammed into me, every nerve in my body screaming. The shadow figures erupted from the darkness, gliding and writhing, their forms stretching and snapping as they closed in, suffocating the air. The air shattered with a deafening cacophony, screams, weeping, and the relentless stomp of invisible feet, all crashing together in a storm of noise. The ground liquefied beneath me, cold, slimy hands burst from the muck, seizing my legs, yanking me downward with impossible strength. I shrieked, thrashing and clawing at the earth, but icy grips crushed my ankles, dragging me deeper as panic exploded in my chest. My heart hammered, breath ragged as the world spun, panic and terror blurring into a dizzying, suffocating darkness. I was being buried alive by vengeful spirits, their weight crushing my chest. Every gasp a battle against suffocating earth and spectral hands. My last sight, a spinning blur of trees, the sky shrinking as I was dragged into the churning abyss. The screams and chaos faded, replaced by a roaring in my ears, my vision fracturing into blackness as I lost consciousness. I jolted awake at dawn, sprawled outside the woods, body shaking, clothes torn and soaked in mud, every muscle burning with pain. Deep, ghostly handprints ringed my ankles, fingernails shattered and bloody from clawing at the earth in blind panic. The forest stood silent, shrouded in mist, its horrors buried and unspoken. The physical scars faded, but the psychological wounds remain, etched deeper than any bruise or scratch. Even now I find myself questioning what was real and what was a trick of the mind, warped by fear and exhaustion. I have evidence, audio, photos, EMF readings, but sometimes in the quiet, I wonder if these are proof of the supernatural or just desperate attempts to convince myself it all happened. The terror, though, is unforgettable, echoing in my thoughts long after the night ended. I survived the screaming woods, but the memory is a wound that may never heal. Sometimes, I catch myself drifting, lost in the fog of that night, unable to tell if I ever truly escaped. I replay the night, the shadow figures, the screams, the sensation of being dragged into the earth. Each detail blurs the line between nightmare and reality, haunting my waking hours and dreams alike. The forest left a psychic scar, a constant reminder of its power. Sometimes I see the woods reflected in my own eyes as if a part of me never left those trees. People ask if I'd return. Never. Daring woods is too dangerous, too hostile. But the real question is, did I ever truly leave, or am I still wandering those haunted paths in my mind? It feeds on fear and suffering, and I was lucky to escape. My investigation is closed, permanently. Yet sometimes I feel as if the forest is still watching, waiting for me to slip back into its grasp. But sometimes I wonder, when those hands dragged me down, did a part of me stay behind? Is there a version of myself, lost and wandering forever trapped in the mist? Late at night, when the house is quiet, I sometimes hear a distant scream, echoing through the fog of memory. And in those moments, I question if I ever truly left, or if the screaming woods followed me home.